When we first met Jazz in 2007, she was only 6 years old and one of the youngest documented cases of an early transition from male to female.
Let's talk about something that's as controversial as it is heartbreaking Jazz Jennings.
Well, folks, Jazz Jennings is a very, very famous transgender person. In fact, Jazz Jennings is the face of the transgender movement beginning at about the age of 4 years old. Jazz Jennings' story is one of the saddest stories you will ever hear, and it really rips the mask off the evils of the transgender propaganda movement.
If you've been paying attention to cultural debates over the years, you've probably heard Jazz's story. At just 6 years old, Jazz was thrust into the national spotlight as the face of what's been called progressive parenting. But when you look past the glitter of TV appearances and glowing media coverage, the story isn't one of triumph. It's one of profound sadness and unanswered questions. I'm also transgender, and I'm proud of that. Before we continue, I'd like to ask for a quick favor. If you're enjoying this content, please take a moment to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of our viewers watch without subscribing, and while it's free for you, it makes a world of difference to us. Have you hit that subscribe button? Awesome. Thank you so much for your support. Now, let's get back to the video. Here's the deal. Jazz Jennings was assigned male at birth, but began transitioning socially at an incredibly young age. By 6, Jazz and their family were appearing on talk shows openly discussing their life as a transgender child. And let's be real, a child that young can't possibly grasp the lifelong implications of transitioning. Kids barely know what they want for dinner.
I'm also transgender, and I'm proud of that.
Fast forward a bit, Jazz becomes the star of I Am Jazz, a TLC show documenting their life. The message was clear. Jazz is living proof that transitioning early leads to happiness, fulfillment, and authenticity. The reality wasn't so simple as the seasons progressed. Cracks in that perfect narrative started to show. Jazz struggled with weight gain, mental health challenges, and a growing sense of discomfort with their body, a tragic irony considering transitioning was supposed to resolve those very issues.
This person was born in 2000. This person is a boy and was transitioned by his parents when he was a very, very young kid. At 6 years old, Jazz Jennings and his family began appearing on TV to speak about the challenges of growing up transgender. At the age of 6. In 2007, Jennings' parents founded Trans Kids Purple Rainbow Foundation to assist transgender youth.
It's about the broader implications of pushing children into irreversible decisions and parading them as success stories before they're old enough to understand what's happening.
Jazz Jennings is having some real-life difficulties. That is not a shock, and it should not be a shock to anyone. But this was trotted out as the new model for American happiness and identity by the entire media for a decade. And I want to trace for just a moment the actual transformation of the story about Jazz Jennings and the overt blind willingness of the media to ignore the real problems in this person's life in order to maintain a false narrative.
If transitioning were the golden ticket to happiness, why do so many in the trans community report higher than average rates of depression and suicidal ideation even after transitioning?
I am a teenage girl. I'm also a soccer player. I'm also an artist. I'd like to think I'm funny. I love hanging out with my friends. I'm also transgender, and I'm proud of that. But, in the end, all these things come together and really just make me Jazz. So I am Jazz.
A girl that's the kind of oversimplification that leads to tragedies like Jazz's ongoing struggles.
And then the media championed this, led by people like Barbara Walters, by your most mainstream sources on 2020, Barbara Walters gushing over the idea that a boy can become a girl.
The saddest part, Jazz's life is now a public case study in what happens when societal pressure, media narratives, and parental decisions collide.
They are the words that any parent would want to hear about their daughter. She is such a remarkable little girl. For a girl named Jazz, the word remarkable doesn't begin to cover it. At just 11 years old, she has taken what most children and their families would regard as a terrible secret and brought it smashing into the open. She is the brave and beautiful new face of a child born in the wrong body.
In one of the show's later seasons, Jazz opened up about struggling with binge eating, gaining significant weight, and feeling utterly disconnected from their own body. And while those issues could affect anyone, they hit differently when you remember that this was supposed to be the success story of early transitioning.
When we first met Jazz in 2007, she was only 6 years old and one of the youngest documented cases of an early transition from male to female.
We'll say things like, God made you special, because there aren't very many little girls out there that have a...
At age 5, her parents, Jeanette and Greg, made an extraordinary decision. They allowed Jazz to openly identify in the opposite gender.
What went wrong, even Jazz's mom, who is so instrumental in facilitating this journey, has had to step into uncomfortable territory. Literally, she admitted on camera to waking Jazz up to perform dilation procedures.
The greatest institutions in the world, but I was actually struggling severely with mental health issues.
Was it zeros?
I started binge eating and I gained weight and more weight and more weight. And now, almost 100 pounds heavier, here I am today.
It's a big old belly.
Oh my God. The side view.
I'm out of shape. Be easy on me.
Having all this extra weight, I can't do so many things with my body that I used to be able to do.
A typical morning's breakfast.
Fast food, maybe a donut or two, and then maybe 2 bagels.
Can a maintenance routine required for Jazz is surgically created anatomy? Let that sink in for a second. This isn't the glamorous image of freedom and self-expression that's sold to the public. It's invasive, painful, and a constant reminder of how permanent these decisions are. So where do we go from here? Well, for starters, we need to stop pretending that transitioning is a one-size-fits-all solution for gender dysphoria. Jazz's story should serve as a cautionary tale, not because being transgender is inherently tragic, but because rushing into life-altering decisions without full understanding or consent can have serious.
With her, I'm worried about, her mental well-being and her dilation. The minute she leaves my house, we have a dilation problem.
That is a concern. When you don't have that watchful eye, they tend to go back to old patterns.
I have woken Jazz out of a dead sleep and taken the dilator and put the lubrication on it and said, here, you take this and you put it in your... Not I will. But Jazz is bad, even when I'm home once a day. I will be so mad if she goes away to college and that thing seals up. I will wring her neck. Can you imagine? No, I can't.
And here's the thing, kids like Jazz aren't just making these decisions on their own. They're influenced by parents, educators, and a media landscape that often frames dissent as bigotry. This isn't about politics or ideology. It's about protecting kids. Jazz Jennings is a human being, not a talking point, and their struggles deserve to be treated with compassion and honesty, not swept under the rug to maintain a convenient narrative. If we really care about helping people, we need to start by acknowledging the full picture, even when it's messy and uncomfortable. So what do you think? Is this a conversation we're ready to have, or are we too wrapped up in fear of offending to face the truth? Let me know in the comments below. And while you're at it, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share with someone who needs to hear this. Let's keep this dialogue going, because if Jazz's story teaches us anything, it's that we can't afford to look away.
And what I want, and it's just very challenging. And I think I'm kind of breaking down a little bit and spiraling into negativity. I just want to feel like myself.
This is incredibly sad. It's incredibly sad stuff. You know where this incredibly sad stuff came from?
Me, and I don't feel like me ever.
All I want to feel is like me and happy.